So I was picking out the next thing to review, and I thought it would almost be negligent not to include the thing that I go through the most, which is ink. Waterproof ink, specifically Dr. P.H. Martin's Bombay India Ink. So today we're going to take a look at their 12-bottle multicolor set of Bombay India Ink. Hi folks, I'm Chris, and if you're new here, welcome to the Inky Rainbow. Now, I go through a lot of ink, so much ink that there is usually at least one bottle in every order from Blick, so like one or two a month, right? I do use multiple brands, but if you're not already using it, I would like to introduce you to my good old standby, Dr. P.H. Martin's Bombay India Ink. Now, I am predisposed to give this a good review because I go through so much of it, or maybe that should be the other way around. Maybe I go through so much of it because it's worth a good review. It's consistent. It is actually waterproof. It doesn't just say it's waterproof. It's high in quality, but low in price, and it's never on back order when I need it. Now, are there better inks? Yes, but they're inconsistent. Sometimes the colors can be inconsistent from one bottle to the next, and sometimes they go on back order, right when you need it, and this never does. If a painting is a loaf of bread, the P.H. Martin's is the all-purpose unbleached white flour that you keep in your cupboard. Now yes, you may buy that specialty bag of dark rye flour for one specific loaf that you're going to make, but this is what you stock in your cupboard. But enough delicious metaphors, let's get to swatching. I'm using Bristol board here. I recommend you keep to a low texture paper if you're going to draw with ink, for the obvious reason that highly textured paper will make crisp lines impossible. Now if you're planning to only use it in washes, of course you can use any kind of paper, but we're going to stick with the Bristol here. So here's how the color goes on, both with a dip pen and a brush. Notice that just adding water doesn't necessarily lead to a lighter color as it does with watercolor unless you dilute it quite a bit. Along with the swatching, I'm creating layers, checking how different colors interact with each other and how it layers with other media. You can see in these clips also that I'm mixing colors and creating a color wheel and trying the ink against black paper. Now, India inks are particles of pigment suspended in a liquid, usually with some kind of thin sealant as a binder. This makes it different from other types of ink and paint in a few ways. For one thing, it's usual for pigment to settle in the bottle, and you will need to shake it well before using. Depending on the sealant, India ink is also usually waterproof or water resistant. And we'll test for that here. And because the pigments are usually larger than other types of ink, you shouldn't use India ink in a fountain pen. Stick to dip pens and paintbrushes. One of the things I like about the Martins is that it has no smell. This is extra important in our home because of the bird. Now for toxicity, I couldn't find an ingredients list. The material sheet only lists water and says the rest of the mixture is, quote, proprietary. So I do trust that it's non-toxic because of the accreditation, but I can't speak to the pros and cons of any of the specific ingredient choices like the type of shellac or the exact pigments. Now if you get this on your skin, it is not coming off for days. Weeks sometimes, even the light colors. If you get it on your clothes, forget it. It is never coming out. And I always manage to get it on my hands. Every single time. I think that's my fault more than Martin's though. Let's take a little detour into the history of this type of ink. India ink was actually invented in what is now China several thousand years ago. So why is it called India ink? Well, like so many things in the Western world, it's named not for its own history, but for where the English imported it from during their colonial period. In its simplest form, it's made out of soot or charcoal, mixed with a liquid, usually water, and some kind of glue or varnish. It could be used that way or prepared as a solid that is then mixed with water later for use. The concoction may or may not be waterproof, depending on what else is in the mixture. The Indian variety that modern, quote, India ink comes from is called Mozzie, or mossy. And the sooty pigment in mossy would include things like ashes, charred bone, and pitch. This is thought to date back to at least the 300s BC, probably earlier. The Egyptians, ancient Greeks, and Romans also had a black ink with a similar composition in use at that time as well. It's, maybe the most obvious way to make a writing medium, so it's easy to see why it would be developed independently all over. But in the West, a lighter brownish ink made from oak galls and iron overtook it in popularity by the medieval era. So, in the 17th century, when the West started importing it again, it was out of use enough to warrant its own name to distinguish it from what they were calling common ink, the oak gall ink. And with its rich color and staying power, it's really not hard to see why it became popular again. I'm more surprised that it ever fell out of favor in the West. And that brings us to last century and Martin's ink specifically. Dr. Martin isn't actually a doctor. He's not even a Martin. He's a Salis, or maybe Salis. He's a Salis, which is the name of the family that owns the company that makes the ink. According to their website, Ben Salis, one of the early owners, was nicknamed Dr. Martin because of his ingenuity. But the name was chosen for the ink because back in the day, back in the 1930s, all manner of elixirs and potions were given names like Dr. Fizzle's Miraculous Hair Growth Tonic to make them sound prestigious. And it definitely seems to have worked here because they've become one of the best known ink brands in the US. So, final review. A couple pros and cons. First, the pros. Dr. P.H. Martin's ink is reliable and consistent. The colors match from one bottle to the next, which you'd think would be a given, but as I said before, isn't the case with some brands. The pigments are vibrant and the ink goes on smoothly, so there's not a lot of granulation. The transparency is both a pro and a con here. If you want to draw light over dark, you need a more opaque ink. But if you're looking for transparent glaze-like layers, then this is the ink for you. These inks truly are waterproof on normal paper. I have seen some reviews that said they're not on specialty surfaces, but on just a normal paper like the Bristol or on a watercolor paper, they are truly waterproof. And it dries very quickly. If I'm painting over it, I will usually let it sit overnight out of an abundance of caution. But you could see in my swatching here that even after just a few minutes, I would draw over it again, and it was dry enough to take another layer of ink over the top of it. I've found that the Martin's does dry faster than some of its peer brands. You can buy any color individually for a very reasonable price, which is a good thing since I'm an idiot who does things like put the black stopper in the yellow ink. This is, you can tell, the next one I'm going to be replacing. One big con is that the pigment settles out of the binder very quickly. You have to shake the bottle every 15 minutes or so while you're using it. And the dropper gets clogged with dried ink very quickly as well. In fact, it's frequently already clogged before I've even opened it the first time. But the only real drawback to this brand of ink is the white ink. It's very transparent. And that's okay for mixing colors, but it has minimal effect when you use it by itself. It was visible on the black paper, but only barely. It was mostly more like gray. And you saw when I put it over top of other colors, you couldn't even really see it. It was just kind of a shiny glaze. That's fine since it came as part of a set, but if you're looking for an opaque white ink that you can use over top of other things, this is not the brand for you. You're going to want to go with a different kind of ink. That is, however, the only point against this set, so I am going to give this a 9 out of 10 sunflower seeds. If you've enjoyed this review, don't forget to dig out your dip pen and do a little drawing, and if you could hit the like button and subscribe, and maybe click the bell for notifications when I post a new video, that would be fantastic. If you really liked this review, my Patreon and Discord links are down in the description. A massive thank you to my patrons because I really couldn't do this without you. We'll also leave a link to the Dr. P.H. Martin's Bombay India Ink 12 bottle set down in the description. That's a tongue twister. So that you can try it out for yourself. I'll be back with another video in a week or two, and until then, happy creating!